Hello, welcome to my video on creating Digby Scrappy Dog. Just to let you know, the body on this is in two parts. You've got the head and then the body itself. And the reason for that is so that you have flexibility on which way he's facing, whether it's forward, left, tilted, up or down. So you've got that flexibility on it. I include one tail, which is this one, so it's very straightforward, and three different ears. So that's Digby with his drop ears. On the video, I actually take you through making this one, which is called Boddington. Stand-up ears with wire in there, so that's another choice. And a very, very simple tail, just tapered with a little bit of fabric on the end there. And just to show that the dog can be a bit funky, we've got this one with big floppy ears. And a fairly straightforward sticking up tail. That's got a wire in it as well. So just to give you an idea that you've got lots of choice. Okay, let's get going. So we're going to start off with doing the body, for which there's 5 pieces. There's the body back, the body front, which is in 2 pieces, tail end, head end, and we've got the chest panel and the base. I've already done the 3 darts on the back and the 2 on the body front, and now it's a case of joining these 2 pieces together, matching the knots. And these 3 dots at the top just help you to denote that it is the top of the body, the pattern piece. So I'll do these 2 together first. So I think the next bit is quite straightforward. So we next join the chest panel to this front here, and then the back panel to there. So I'll do both of those. That's quite straightforward. So we've now got this all joined up together, front panel, chest and the back panel piece, and we're going to join the back, if you like, the 2 sides together. So you start from the double dot, join it up with the double dot, and then go all the way round and down to the base. And then we actually fit the base itself. So it's just from the double dot all the way down to this point here. Now, when you come to do this back seam, there was no intention for the darts to line up, so don't panic if they don't. Now we fit the base, and on the base you'll see that there's a centre back, the head, the tail, and the head has got 2 markings for the seam lines. Then you've got this mark here for where that fits the join in the front of the dog, and then you've got the tail. So line it up so everything is in place. There's my back, centre back, there's my centre mark there, and pin it all round and line it up so you've got your marking for the tail to go to that seam at the tail. Then you've got the front join there, and then you've got the 2 sort of sides of the shoulders, if you like, that mark up with the 2 side seams there. Stitch it up, but leave a gap in the tail end, just a couple of inches, because although you can stuff from the head, I think it's best to just leave that so that if you want a little bit of extra stuffing, you can do that, and you can always sew it up by hand. There we have the base fitted, and I've just left this section here about 3 inches to stuff if I need to, and I'll just stitch that closed by hand. So we can turn that inside out, and that's ready for stuffing. And you'll notice that the back seam has got a bit of a curve on it. The tail doesn't end up exactly at the centre point because he's leaning over and he's just got one leg exposed, but that's roughly how it will go. So that's ready for stuffing now. So going on to the head now, we've got the forehead, back of the head, the snout, the outer snout, which has got the darts in it, and the chin. You could do the chin as well in your finish fabric. That's an option. I'm not sure what colour this one's going to be at the moment, so I've done it in the shell fabric. But this is the finish fabric for the snout, because you're going to stuff this outside, and that's going to leave this open, which you will then cover up with a patch. So I would say it's better to do the snout with the darts in as your finished fabric. So you might want a white nose, or in this case this can have a grey nose. But the under snout, if you like, which is up that way, can stay in your shell fabric, because this is going to go over top of that. You're going to stuff it under there to give it a bit more jowl, and then you're going to have another patch that will go over and hide any raw edges. So I've already done the 3 darts on the forehead and the 2 darts on the back. So now I can join those 2 together, the 2 back heads together. I'm going to do the 2 darts on the outer snout as well, and then I'll show you the next process. When you use the finish fabric, obviously you need to change your thread to a colour that doesn't show, and when you do your markings for the darts, you would need to make sure that you use tailor tacks or something, but not obviously a felt tip pen. So what we're going to do, we're going to line up the markings, the dots on the nose and this under chin area, and we're going to do a 5mm seam all the way around here, just to join these 2 together. It makes it easier when you then have to go like that and go round to this point. It just means that you've got the 2 fixed together. So I'll go and do those and show you what I mean. So that's the outer snout fitted to the snout, so it gives you that pocket to fill with a bit of wadding to give it a little bit more definition. Now you add the 2 together, or join the 2 together, and you'll be going from the top all the way round to this lower dot here, clearer on that side. So 10mm, starting from the top, going all the way round and to this point here. That's where the chin will be added. So there we've done the 10mm seam all the way along the top of the nose, to the point of the nose, and down to the chin, that dot at the chin. So you can turn that inside out and see then that that's the nose down to the chin, and which gives you this bit just to stuff. Later on we're going to do a little seam along there, which will give it this sort of flat nose, a bit like that. So in order to do that, you might just want to trim off this here, so it's not so bulky. So I'll do that in a moment. The next job is to fit the forehead to this. So the darts, it goes like that. This the snout. The darts join at this point. So centre seams together and stitch down to join the 2 dots on that point there on either side. So I'll just do that for you. So we've now added the forehead to the snout, and now it's the chin. So you may or may not have done this out of your finished fabric. I didn't want to do the same fabric. I'm not quite sure what I should do, so I've done it in the shell fabric and I'll patch onto it. So this is the chin piece, and what you're doing is you're going from the chin dot, that's the nose dot, that's the chin dot, and you're going down to this dot at the base. So you attach the chin to the base, to that dot. When you get to the dot, you just need to snip that so that you can get round the corner, and you carry on down to the bottom there. So again, to show you, it's going to be on the other side. I'm going to put my needle in that point there, go down to the chin dot there, and continue along there. But in doing so, you just have to snip that back seam so that it will turn round the corner and you're not sewing over it. And then the head is almost, well, it's getting there. So that's the chin stitched in now. So just to reiterate, you start off at the dot, which is the chin point, go down to this point, to the dot, and then just ease that, do a knit there so that you can then turn the fabric round and just continue to the base, and you do that on the same side, on the other side as well. So then that can be, oh, and I've also trimmed off a little bit of that, the nose, because that's where we're going to stitch on the outside later. So you can turn that through. And that's his nose. See, at the moment it's quite a pointy one, which might be okay for we've had a cocker, and that was quite pointy, but you also might want to just do a stitch in there to make it a wider nose, so that's why I just trimmed it off on the back. So that makes a nice neat finish around the neckline, and now we have to fit the back of the head to it. So right sides together, and just fit that join in the centre seam and down to the neck. So you can do both of those seams together. The head's now fitted, the back of the head is now fitted to the front. And so that's ready to stuff. So we're now on to the legs, and this is the back leg that lays over the top of the body with the thigh. So I've done the two darts in the actual thigh and leg ready, and now we just attach the two together, so with right sides together. And this is going to be stuffed, but lightly stuffed. Well, the foot paw will be quite heavily stuffed, but then it will gradually get lighter and lighter before you get up to the top of the back area. So with the stitching, I would suggest you start here and go round to the base, then we'll put the paw on, and then we'll go up to here. And I haven't got the markings on this one, but there is marking on the pattern, so it's going to be around about here that you'll be stitching, but the markings are on the pattern. So that's the thigh top seam done along there, and now we've got to fit in the paw base. And just mark up the centre dot to the seam, and then you're going to stitch down to the dot at the bottom there. This is actually a slightly stretchy fabric, so I've just got to make sure that it lines up properly. So we're going to go down there, through the dart to the base, to that dot, and then do the same. I might as well do both sides to the same to the dot. Okay. So that's the paw pad in situ now, gone up to this dot at the back of the heel. And so now all you do is to close that and go up to the marker up round here. So that's that done, that back seam now, so that bit actually is near the tail end of the dog. But make sure you don't catch the underneath the paw pad, because this is your finished fabric, so that would show. Okay, so that's ready for stuffing, and now we go on to the other 3 paws. There's 2 longer paws at the front, and then there's a smaller one sort of underneath his belly. So we take, I've done the darts already, and it's quite simple really. Now these ones are quite chunky paws, so if you wanted to reduce that down a bit, you could either take a larger seam allowance, or you could just trim off 5mm or so. And also you can see that they're quite chunky at the front. I'm mainly modelling this on our Cocker Spaniel, who had lovely great big paws, but I think it looks good. But you could also trim that down as well, that's up to you. So the first thing to do, obviously, do the darts in all 6 of the paws, and then seam along the top, and then we will put the paw pad in like the other one really, although it's left open at the back here. When you do the paw, make sure that your darts are pretty close to correct, because if you take one dart larger than the other, then the paw is not going to fit properly. And also this is the outer fabric, so it needs to be pretty good. It's not so bad if it's covered up with patches. So then you just put the paw pad in, mark up the dot with the seam there, and then you've got 2 dots either side just for guidance, and stitch that in, and then that'll be ready for stuffing too. That's the paw pad fitted on all 3 of the legs. If you want, for turning inside out, these are really brilliant, because they're, with the bristles it's not so sharp, so that makes it easy. So those 3 are ready to stuff. Before you turn this one through, just do a couple of nicks there on that seam so it'll fold better and lay better. So that's those ready to stuff. I've started stuffing the head and the body, and when you do the stuffing, just bear in mind that this seam is over slightly, because he's leaning on one leg, and this one's going to be like that. So start stuffing with that in mind, and keep the bottom as flat as you possibly can. You've still got the access there to stuff at the back, and that is actually very useful. And carry on stuffing right up to the neck. This one, I don't know if I've already said or not, but the head is detached purely so that you can then decide whether you want it facing forward or facing that way. With his leg on there, then I think you'd want it facing that way, but you might want it like that, or you might want it slightly crooked with a quirky angle. So you've got that option, but you need to stuff them both pretty well before we then put the head on. And the legs as well. This one, as I say, you stuff to around about here, and then when you've done your patching on the body and you come to fit that, you can angle that, reduce it and mould it so that it doesn't look like a big blob added onto it, so like Digby here, so you wouldn't know that was there underneath. Right, I'll carry on stuffing and then take you to I think the next stage will be to fit the head, and then it's patching. So I've stuffed the body right up to the top, and I've really stuffed the head. Actually, I will put a little bit more in there. And now it's time to add the head. Now this does take a bit of time because you've got to obviously pop the head on top of there and fiddle with it until you're happy with the actual way it looks. Now you might want it forward, you might want it to the side. I'm going to try on this one and just do it at a slight angle, a quirky angle, because this one I think will have pointy ears, and it just might look a bit different. So start pinning as you go, and then you'll pin to begin with, but then you will need to adjust it. It's kind of got a mind of its own. I'm afraid this fabric is dreadful. It's an old Dormer Valance. Well, not that old, but I think it's been used as a dust sheet as well. But it really wasn't that good on the bed, and now it just was a horrible thing to wash. You can't iron it, and I might regret using it because the pins don't go through very well either. So it might be used for stuffing. But you need to go round and round until you get the right pose. I might change my mind. He might not be at an angle, he might just be looking slightly forward. And gradually pull it down, and then you'll just be stitching this in place with some nice strong thread. You've got quite a bit of overlap anyway, so you know you can do this several times to get the right angle that you want. There's no wire in this, or I haven't put any wire in it, so you know, really make sure that you stuff it well. And of course all this raw edging will be covered with patches anyway. But carry on until you feel happy that you've got the right sort of look to it. I'm going to do little sticky up ears on this one, little triangular ears. So I kind of like the idea of it having a crooked look. But we'll see how we go. But you could have it just looking forward, or you could have it straight and looking to the one side, so the choice is yours. But as I say, it does take a bit of time, and you might take it off and start again. So this is Digby anyway, so he's kind of just looking over his left foot, so it's a slight angle, but he could have been looking forward, and he could have had a slight kink.
I'm home, darling.
So here's the neckline. I've pinned and pulled and pinned and what have you on this one. I did try a slight angle, but you have to, when you put your angle on it, you have to look at it from all sides, and it did look a bit strange from this side that his head wasn't so visible. So if you do try a quirky angle, make sure that it looks okay from all sides. I wasn't so sure about that, but I think that's just about enough of a little bit of a looking up and slightly over to the left, but not too far. So once you've got to this stage, you want a very strong needle, very strong thread, and to just stitch all the way around there so it's very securely in place. There's quite an overlap, probably about an inch, but you need that just to make sure it's strong enough. So we've stuffed the front paws now, and we're putting the wire in the base. The front paws, it does need a wire so that it will help it to stand up straight, and when you pick it up its legs will be out straight. So all you need to do is cut a piece of wire and shape it a little bit, and it will go in with a bit of persuasion. And you obviously need to keep it to the base, because it's going to go around the paw pad itself at the end. Get it to that sort of seam line if you can. And when you stuff, try and stuff with it held down like that, and push your stuffing in so that the base remains as flat as possible. And then all I've done is trim it off, fold it round like that, and that's a piece of masking tape to hold it together. So I'll do the same with this one. You only need to do that for the two front legs, because the back leg is partly underneath this body, so it doesn't need that extra support. With the back leg with the hip attached, I've got a piece of wire that's 22 inches, I think it is, and this wire has to go in so that it gives the definition to the paw, and then comes up and follows that, roughly that line. It doesn't need to come right up to the top, because that's going to be smoothed out onto the body. So you need to get this in. I've already stuffed the paw a little bit, and I've wrapped it in masking tape just so that you don't feel it too much on the actual hip itself. So that's into the paw. And then one strand you need to pop down as much as you can into the heel. And then that will follow the back end. And then the other one can come up and shape this front end. So you've got one wire at the front and one wire at the back, and you will trim those off in due course, but having it like that means that you've got paw that's quite solid into the heel, and now you can continue to stuff, so it's going to be quite solid down this bit, and then as I say graduated, because that is going to go over. This is another one, by the way, that's in process. So both legs, front legs, be going like that, and this one is going to be going over like that. And you have a bit more chance with the wire in it. You can manipulate the back leg a little bit more. So I'm going to carry on stuffing this one. In fact, while I've got this other little one, I've got a couple on the go, see, at the moment. So we've got Digby, he's got his ears to be done. So just a word on the patching. All of this patchwork, this was all just scraps I had. I had an old pair of trousers that I used for mostly the black, and I originally wanted to do all black, but it actually looked quite dead. It was much too dark, so it needed to have these lighter shades on, because really if you've got a dog with a black coat, even though it's all black, it reflects the light, so it had to have some colour on it. So just, I mean, I'm very much at random. Obviously I wouldn't put two patches the same fabric together, although obviously the black is partly together, but just odd shapes. You could be more symmetrical, make them more square, more triangular, and I've just used 2 strands of embroidery thread. In fact, on this one I've used to do upholstery, so I've actually got upholstery thread for my industrial machine, and I use that quite a lot as well, because it looks like a couple of strands of embroidery thread anyway. And then just put them on at random. There's no fixed way. Obviously if you've got a wider, fatter part, flatter, then you can use maybe bigger patches, and as you come up to the neck, particularly on the neck at the front, you might need to go down, have something a bit smaller. Oops, I have to trim that off. And round the paws, sometimes something a bit smaller. I've done those there because there obviously is a join there where the paws are jointed, and I just thought that made it look a bit more appealing like that. So yeah, just play, don't be too sort of rigid. You've obviously got an idea of colour scheme that you want, and just have to go with the flow. I've gone the grey underneath there with the cream coloured bib and muzzle, and this one is going to be mainly browns, and I've been experimenting with the ears. I'm going to do only the 3 types of ears for the pattern, which will be this type with sort of floppy ear, this one I don't know whether you'd call it dachshund or quite what it is, and then this type. But there's so many different ears a dog may have, and so you just have to have a go and make it up yourself. And also with the tail, I've got this one which is a bit like a cocker, but again, and I'll include this as a pattern. It's very straightforward though, really. But there's so many different tails of breeds of dogs, so again you'd have to be a little bit creative. Okay, so I'm going to carry on with the leg, and I'll come back when I've done a little bit more of the patching on this one. Obviously I've got to sew that on very, very well, very tightly with a very strong thread, because you don't want the head to start wobbling. It's not as if it's a toy though, so it's really just an ornament. And I'm going to carry on doing some of the brown patches like this one on this this dog as well. Just want to show you where I've stitched the head onto the body, and that's a very, very strong thread, and I've opened up a seam at the front here, and I've just stuffed quite a bit more wadding up there. If you use the paintbrush, you can stuff it further up into the head and then fill the gap. It just means that it's very, very secure and stiff. Obviously, as I've said before, it's not a toy, but it's best to make it as firm as you possibly can while you've got the opportunity, because once the patches go on, it's going to be more difficult. And obviously when you're dressing the head, you're going to be moving it around a little bit anyway, so try and make it as firm as possible.